Ina had never been afraid of hard work. Her hands had known fabric since she was a girl. Rough, dyed cotton in her village, silk and lace as she grew. Those hands built a business from scratch, one stitch at a time. When she married Pakiro, she brought more than just her love. She brought drive, resilience, and a belief that love, no matter how cold the world, could melt the hardest walls. But those walls were thicker than she expected. The first time she visited Pakiro's family, as his fiancée, his mother had greeted her with a thin smile and eyes that looked past her shoulder. His sisters examined her dress with hidden smirks. One whispered, "She's not even from the city." Still, Ina smiled. She brought food, gifts, her best wrapper. She helped clean the dishes after dinner. When she left that night, Pakiro said, "You did well." She took that as a win. 2 years later, she had stopped counting how many wins she never actually won. Pakiro's mother still called her the village girl. His sisters never included her in anything: weddings, birthdays, prayers. When she spoke, they nodded but didn't listen. One of them, Arik, even had the nerve to ask once, "So when will you start doing something real? Or are you just going to keep sewing cloths?" Ina had laughed politely, hiding the sting. Pakiro, sitting nearby, sipped his drink and said nothing. That silence was a recurring character in her marriage. One evening, as she served dinner, a hot pot of egusi with pounded yam, she asked gently, "Did you tell your mother I paid Junior's school fees?" Pakiro didn't look up from his phone. "It's not necessary to tell her everything, but she thinks you did it," so Ina sighed. "It would be nice if she knew I'm not just let it go, Ina." His voice was sharp. "They're not going to change." He said it like it was a fact, not something he could ever challenge. Still, she stayed. When Pakiro lost his job at the bank, she dipped into her textile savings to pay the rent and buy food. She paid off the loan he had secretly taken out to invest in a cousin's failed poultry business. When his siblings needed money for textbooks or transportation, she handled it. She never mentioned the sacrifices. She believed love didn't need receipts. She told herself, "They'll see it eventually. They'll know I'm here for them." Then came the house. The old family home was falling apart. Cracked walls, leaking roof, broken doors. No one in the family had the money to fix it. So Ina started small. She repaired the bathroom, then the kitchen. Then she hired masons and built new rooms. Before long, the house looked like it had been reborn. She used her business income, taking only what she needed to eat and feed her son. The land title remained in the family's name, but she kept all the documents. Pakiro didn't question it. He was happy just seeing things improve. His mother praised the renovations, but never her. "God is finally answering our prayers," she said one afternoon, touching the smooth new tiles Ina had paid for. Ina smiled and returned to her sewing machine. Her business became the beating heart of that home. The same business her in-laws mocked, calling her just a tailor, now paid for the electricity, the meals, and their weekend visits to the hair salon. She ran it from a modest corner shop in town, surrounded by bolts of cloth and the hum of machines. She employed 2 young apprentices, trained them well, and taught them how to treat every customer like royalty. One of her clients, Madame Fola, asked once, "Ina, you always look calm. Don't you ever get tired of carrying so much?" Ina smiled. "When you do it out of love, it feels lighter. But even love has weight." The first shift came subtly. Her mother-in-law began mentioning a new friend, Lami. "She's so polished, so respectful, always helping me with errands." At first, Ina paid it no mind. Then Lami began showing up for dinner. Then she was invited to morning prayers. One Sunday, Ina came home from the shop and found Lami laughing with her in the kitchen, wearing a wrapper nearly identical to Ina's own. She forced a smile. "You must be Lami." Lami turned, smile soft and voice like honey. "Ina, I've heard so much about you." Ina's stomach tightened. She extended her hand anyway. It didn't stop there. Lami started joining the family for everything. Celebrations, outings, even private discussions. Ina would open her phone and see pictures on social media, birthdays she hadn't been told about, with Lami front and center, seated where Ina once sat, wearing jewelry eerily similar to Ina's wedding. Beads. She brought it up with Pakiro one night. "Why is she always here?" she asked. "She's just around." "Don't overthink," he muttered. "But your mother treats her like she's a family friend." Ina stared at him. "Do you even see what's happening?" He didn't answer. Her heart cracked a little. More each day, she came home one afternoon, sweating from the heat, carrying food from the market. The gate was open. That was odd. She stepped inside and froze. Her belongings, clothes, shoes, kitchen utensils, even her son's toys were packed in nylon bags near the entrance. Pakiro stood there, in the middle of the compound, arms folded, face blank. "It's not working anymore," he said. Dorina blinked. "What? You have to go." She looked past him and saw Lamy, wearing one of Ina's wrappers, her slippers, her head tie. Lamy didn't look away. She didn't even pretend to be sorry. Her lips curled into a quiet, victorious smirk. Then the final blow came. Pakiro's mother emerged from the house, arms folded. "We need someone who can elevate the family name," she said sharply. "You've done enough. It's time for someone better." Ina's knees weakened, but she didn't fall. She looked at her son, standing nearby, holding her hand tightly. She looked at the house she had built, the people she had fed, supported, loved. And then, she did something no one expected. She smiled. "Come," she said to her son, and walked away, not with rage, not with tears, but with a silence so loud it made the whole compound feel hollow. The market air was thick that day. Ripe plantains, diesel fumes, the distant chatter of bargaining voices. Ina balanced a basket on her head, her fingers laced tightly around her son's hand as they made their way through the winding path home. It was late. The sun dipped low, casting a warm gold over the rooftops. She'd bought fresh vegetables, chicken, and a small sweet for her boy, just enough to make dinner feel like a celebration. But something felt wrong the moment. She reached the compound. The gate was open, wide, not ajar, not unlocked, open like an invitation or a warning. Ina paused. Her son looked up at her, his face scrunching with confusion. "Mama," he whispered. She forced a smile and walked in. The first thing she saw was the nylon bag, black, stretched and lumpy. Her wrapper was half hanging out of it, one she had sewn herself, with golden thread woven carefully around the edge. Then another bag, then her shoes, then the small box, with her son's toys, the plastic car, the hand-sewn lion. He refused to sleep without. Everything she owned was packed, dumped like garbage, waiting to be picked up. She blinked, thinking maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe there had been a flood. Maybe the roof caved in and someone had moved her things to keep them safe. But then she saw them. Pakiro stood in the middle of the courtyard, expressionless, as if he wasn't seeing the mother of his child, as if he had been rehearsing this moment and finally decided to deliver his lines. "It's not working anymore, Ina," he said flatly. Behind him, standing just inside the doorway, was Lamy, wearing Ina's pink wrapper, her favorite slippers, the ones with the braided straps Ina had customized herself. Even her head tie. The knot was different, clumsy, but unmistakably Ina's fabric. And Lamy was smiling. Days before this, the signs had started gathering like storm clouds. Lamy had become more than just a family friend. She was the new daughter-in-law in everything but name. She greeted guests at the door. She helped serve food during Sunday meals. She took over the chair Ina used to occupy during family meetings, the one beside Pakiro, as if it had always been hers. Ina had first noticed it at breakfast. She reached for the teacup she always used, ivory ceramic, chipped slightly at the rim, only to find it gone. Later that morning, she saw Lamy drinking from it, sitting in Ina's chair, laughing at something Pakiro's sister had said. Ina's voice caught in her throat, but she swallowed it. At first, Lamy was cautious. She stayed polite, helpful, sugar-sweet. She complimented Ina's cooking, called her Auntie Ina in front of others, smiled just enough to seem innocent. But over time, the smile changed. It became performative, hollow. And when they were alone, Lamy's eyes held no warmth, just calculation. The praise from Pakiro's mother came louder each day. "Lamy is so polished," she gushed once, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A girl who understands how to carry herself in front of people." Ina had just walked in from the kitchen, carrying a tray of food. She paused, then continued forward, placing the tray on the table without a word. Pakiro didn't look up from his phone. His brothers laughed with Lamy. His sisters shared gossip with her. The family started taking photos without Ina, making plans without her, organizing events she was never told about. She only saw them later, the photos online, the laughter in their captions. They had stopped pretending she was part of the family. One afternoon, Ina found Lammy in her sewing space, not the shop in town, the small room at the back of the house where she sometimes mended clothes or stored fabric. Lammy stood in front of Ina's shelf, running her fingers across the neatly folded cloth. "I love your taste," Lammy said. Without turning, Ina stayed silent. "I'm thinking of starting a fashion page online," Lammy continued, plucking a roll of Ankara and holding it against her body. "I could tag you, if you want. But of course, I'll modify the style a little. Add some city flair." Ina stepped forward. "Those are custom orders. Clients' fabrics." Lammy blinked innocently. "Oh, I didn't touch anything." She dropped the cloth like it burned her, smiled, walked out. That night, Ina told Pakiro she was uncomfortable. "She's in my space," she said, her voice low. "My things, my seat, my teacup." Pakiro barely looked up. "She's just being friendly. Don't be dramatic." "She's wearing my clothes, Pakiro." "So what? You're always saying love is sharing." "She's not family," Ina said, more forcefully. "Why is she in every meeting? Why does your mother treat her like enough?" Pakiro's voice cut through the room, cold, unrecognizable. "She's around, let it go." And just like that, the conversation ended. But the replacement wasn't just physical. It was spiritual, symbolic. The family that once tolerated Ina now worshipped Lammy. They hung on her words. They shared private jokes. Her laughter echoed through rooms that once felt sacred. Even Pakiro, once quietly detached, began walking beside Lammy in public, opening doors for her, holding her hand in front of others. Ina had never gotten that version of him. Not once. It was Junior who finally asked, "Why doesn't Grandma hug you anymore?" Ina didn't know what to say. She wrapped her arms around him, held him tight, and said, "Some people forget what love looks like when it's not loud." He didn't understand, but he nodded. The day before she was thrown out, Lammy made her boldest move yet. During breakfast, Ina walked in to find Lammy wearing the exact same outfit Ina had sewn for her anniversary, sky blue wrapper, matching blouse with delicate embroidery. The one she had worn on the night she told Pakiro she was pregnant with Junior. "Where did you get that?" Ina asked. Lammy tilted her head. "Oh, this. I found it in one of the boxes. It wasn't labeled." Ina's voice was firm. "It's mine." "Then maybe you shouldn't have left it behind," Lammy said sweetly, picking up her tea. Pakiro sat quietly, said nothing. Again. So when she returned from the market and saw her life packed into bags, the only thing that surprised her was how unsurprised she felt. She looked at Pakiro, trying to find any flicker of the man she had believed in. Nothing. She looked at Lammy, radiant in borrowed clothes, triumphant in silence. Then her mother-in-law stepped forward, arms folded like a judge delivering a verdict. "We need someone who can elevate the family name," she said. "You've done enough. It's time for someone better." Ina didn't scream. She didn't plead. She simply picked up her son's hand, looked one last time at the house she had built, and whispered, "It's time to go." Her son clutched her fingers tighter. They walked out together. Outside, the sky had begun to dim. The sun hung low, tired but unbroken, just like her. She walked past the neighbors, who watched silently, past the tailor who had mocked her prices, past the boys who once asked her to mend their uniforms for free. Her head was high, because even if they took everything she had given, they had no idea she still held the keys. The morning after she left the house, Ina sat on a wooden bench outside her cousin's small bungalow. The sky was grey, not stormy, just heavy. Still, her son leaned against her side, eating boiled yam with palm oil. She hadn't said much since they arrived, only that they wouldn't be staying long. "What will you do now?" her cousin had asked the night before. Ina hadn't answered, not because she didn't know, but because she did. She pulled out the small tin box from her bag. Inside were documents folded neatly, aged at the edges, property deeds, business registrations, bank account authorizations, all of them bearing the same signature, hers. She had protected herself long before she knew she'd need to. Pakiro didn't care about paperwork. He had always waved it off. "You're good with these things," he'd say. "Just tell me where to sign." He did sign. Everything she had built with love, yes, but she had built smart. The first move was quiet. She went to the town registry and submitted the house deed transfer papers. It was hers, legally, fully. The family hadn't noticed when she had asked the local chief to notarize the final documents years ago. The land, too, still under her name. Within 48 hours, she met with a real estate agent, signed a deal. and handed over the keys to the house that once stood as her proof of loyalty. She left the bags they had thrown her out with in her cousin's spare room, walked into the bank, and opened a fresh business account in a new city. The agent called. 2 days later, the house has been sold. Madam, full payment cleared. Ina simply said, "Thank you." Back at the family compound, chaos had begun to settle like dust. No one wanted to sweep. It started with the locks. Pakiro's key didn't turn anymore. He jiggled it, cursed, tried again. Nothing. The next day, the car wouldn't start. The driver, paid through Ina's business account, didn't show up. Call him. Pakiro barked, but his number was no longer in service. Then the electricity cut off. Generator. His mother screamed, but the diesel delivery hadn't arrived. The account with the supplier had been closed. The staff, cook, cleaner, laundry girl, stopped coming one by one, and then the accounts froze. At the bank, Pakiro stood at the counter, face twisted in disbelief. "This must be an error," he told the manager. The man checked again, politely. The account holder requested all operations be paused. Full access withdrawn. "What account holder?" Pakiro snapped. The manager met his eyes. "Mother? Ina." Pakiro felt the words punch through his chest. He went home in silence. Meanwhile, Lemmy sat on the couch, fanning herself with a plastic plate. Sweat clung to her temples. The AC hadn't worked in 2 days. The fridge had started to smell. There was no food, no delivery, no driver. "What's going on?" she asked. Annoyed, Pakiro just shook his head. "I'm sorting it." But he wasn't. He was unraveling. Everything he once leaned on was collapsing. The lifestyle they had flexed was built on foundations they never laid. And Lammy had come for a crown already polished, but the queen had taken her shine with her. Back in the city, Ina moved differently. She rented a small office in a commercial district, clean space, high ceilings, sunlight on fabric. Her business, once mocked as just tailoring, was reborn as a full-scale textile export company. She made 2 phone calls, and within days, her old clients, the real ones, came flooding back. Orders resumed. The name Ina passed through business circles like a rising tide, and still, she said nothing. No social media posts, no dramatic stories, no public declarations. Just work, quiet and steady. Back in the village, rumors bloomed like wildflowers. "Did you hear she sold the house? I thought it was under Pakiro's name." "No." "Oh, they said she owned everything, even the car, even the business." "Yes, everything, even the school fees for the siblings." Her money. The same mouths that once called her just a tailor now whispered with respect and fear. At home, Lemmy had lost her glow. The house was dark, literally. No light, no fans, no TV. She sat in silence most days, staring at her phone, waiting for things to go back to normal. But the new normal was this: no staff. No money. No help. And now, no reputation. Even the women who used to fawn over her at events now crossed the street when they saw her. The girls who envied her outfits no longer asked where she shopped. The community knew. They had replaced gold with glitter, and the shine had vanished. Pakiro tried to find Ina. First through friends, then through family. Then finally he showed up at her cousin's house, but she wasn't there. She had already moved on. He called, left famous, no response. One day, in a last attempt, he stood at the gate of her new showroom, clean, professional, successful. He looked through the glass and saw a life he never built, but once benefited from. He stepped inside. The staff paused. Ina looked up from her desk. Her presence was different now. Confident. Calm, sharp, dressed in sleek fabric, natural hair wrapped in a bold head tie, eyes steady. Pakiro cleared his throat. Can I see our son?" Ina looked at him for a long time, then said, softly but firmly, "He's not a burden to carry only when life is easy." She opened a file from her drawer and laid it in front of him. Inside, receipts, signatures, legal transfers, registrations. All signed by him. She closed the folder, slid it back, and stood. "You handed me the power when you had nothing. I used it to build, and now I'm taking it back." She didn't shout, didn't insult, didn't even offer a goodbye. She walked past him, her heels quiet against the tiled floor, her son holding her hand, and disappeared into the bright hallway beyond. Stood there, broken. He hadn't just lost a wife, he had lost his lifeline, the roof he lived under, the business that paid his bills. The identity he wore proudly in public all belonged to a woman he thought would never leave. But Ina didn't just leave, she ascended, and she did it without a single scream. The silence in the house was no longer peaceful. It was suffocating. Ceiling fans spun without electricity. The curtains, once fresh and white, now hung limp and grey. Plates stacked in the sink. The fridge had been empty for weeks. No driver, no generator. The only light came from the morning sun creeping through dusty windows. LAM I sat on the floor of what used to be the living room, back against a wall, scrolling through her phone even, though the Wi-Fi had been disconnected. Her scarf was damped from sweat. Her ankle bracelet, once her favorite accessory, now irritated her. Skin. Everything itched, everything crumbled. It started with whispers, then the stares, then the mockery. The same women who once envied her soft voice and sleek clothes now turned their backs when she walked by. She can't even afford palm oil, someone had said loudly at the market. She came in wearing Ina's old slippers. Another laughed. The girls who once begged for her fashion tips now whispered behind their hands. Even the neighbors' children mocked her when she passed. One had the nerve to shout, "Where's your helper now, auntie?" Lammy had no answer. Pakiro was worse. He had become a ghost. Sunken eyes, restless hands, muttering to himself about things he couldn't fix. Every solution he tried led back to the same truth. He owned nothing, not the house, not the car, not the business, not even his own bank account. He had mistaken control for ownership, and now the empire he lived in had turned to ash. The family tried to hide their shame at first. They told visitors Ina had moved abroad and that things were under transition, but lies have a short shelf life, especially in villages that feast on gossip. Then came the final humiliation, the wedding. They had planned it for months, a grand event to reclaim pride, rewrite the story, and make Lami official. Invitations were printed, food ordered, musicians paid, but on the day of the wedding, no one came. The chairs stood in perfect rows, the music played, the food sat untouched. Even the neighbors, once eager to attend any celebration, stayed indoors. Stood at the altar, sweating, humiliated. Lammy sat beside him, dressed in borrowed lace, her smile frozen and hollow. His mother kept fanning herself, eyes darting nervously at the empty seats. It was a funeral wearing wedding clothes. In the city, Ina stood in a room full of lights. Camera flashes blinked like stars. A reporter asked her to smile again. She did, soft and confident. The magazine cover read, "Woman of Impact, from quiet tailor to national leader." She hadn't asked for the spotlight. She earned it at the awards gala. She wore a deep blue gown of her own design, and on her wrist, a simple bracelet her son had made from beads. Her company now exported to 3 countries. She employed people, many of them women, who, like her, had been told they were not enough. As the applause filled the ballroom, Ina stood on the stage, eyes glistening, but her voice calm. "I was told that silence is weakness," she said into the microphone, "but I have learned silence is a sword. And when you know who you are, you don't have to shout to be heard." The crowd erupted. Back in the village, the contrast was unbearable. While Ina was on the front page, Pakiro was on the back, in gossip columns and in hushed laughter. His name, once carried with pride, was now the punchline of a moral lesson. Married a title and lost the empire. The tailor built a kingdom. He gave it away. The woman they mocked is the one who made them kings. His mother refused to leave the compound. She stopped going to church. Even her favorite market, women started giving her pity discounts. Araik, one of his sisters, had once scoffed, "She's just a tailor." Now, she stood in line at Ina's new distribution center, trying to apply for work under a fake name. She was turned away. Then came the final visit. Pakiro showed up at Ina's new showroom, not angry, not aggressive, just empty. He had aged 5 years in 5 months. His voice cracked. "Ina, ... please. I just want to see Junior." Ina looked up from a client meeting, asked her assistant to give them the room. She didn't yell, she didn't cry, she studied him. The man who once watched her be erased from her own home and said nothing. Then she walked to the back room. Moments later, she returned holding her son's hand. Junior looked at his father, hesitant, knelt. "Hey champ, you remember me?" Junior nodded, but didn't move forward. Ina crouched beside him, her hand on his back. Then she looked up at Pakiro. "He's not a burden to carry only when it's convenient." she said. Her voice was soft, but it left bruises. Pakiro's shoulders dropped. He had no rebuttal, only shame. He tried again. Ina, I was confused. I didn't think. She interrupted. You thought I would stay, that I'd keep giving while being erased. He swallowed. She walked to her desk and opened a drawer. She removed a manila folder, the same one she had shown him before. Quietly, she placed it on the table again. Inside, the house, the land, the company, the cars, the accounts, his name signed beneath every line. She tapped the last page. You gave it all to me. You just didn't think I'd know how to use it. He nodded slowly, lips trembling. I'm sorry. Ina gave him a long look, not of hatred, not even of anger, but of finality. You're not sorry you lost me, she said. You're sorry you lost what I gave. She turned to her son. Let's go. They left him standing there, surrounded by fabrics, light, and success, all sewn by the hands he once dismissed. News of Ina's rise spread fast. Her face appeared on billboards. Radio shows praised her leadership. Business forums invited her to speak. And through it all, she remained humble. No interviews about her past, no public takedowns of her She let the silence speak louder than revenge ever could. Her success became a mirror, and in that mirror, everyone saw themselves. Lami saw an illusion she could no longer maintain. Pakiro saw a life that wasn't stolen, it was forfeited. His mother saw the daughter-in-law she never deserved, and the village saw the truth. They had crowned the wrong queen. In the village, people talked, not the way they used to whisper. This time, they spoke openly. In the markets, at the church gates, by the well. The name on everyone's lips wasn't Lami's anymore. It was Ina, that the tailor they once mocked, the quiet wife they ignored. Now, the woman they wished they had protected. She paid for their school fees. Can you believe it? She built the entire house herself, and they threw her out like she was nothing. Well, now, she's on the news while they can't even pay for food. The family name that once carried weight, now carried shame. The compound that once held parties, now echoed with silence. And Lami, the bride they praised as perfect, had become invisible. She no longer walked proudly through the market. She stopped attending events. Even her own parents, once boastful and overconfident, stopped visiting the village altogether. No one wanted to be associated with failure that loud. One day, a group of women gathered under the old baobab tree near the road. She came from nothing, one woman said, stirring her pot of soup. No, replied another, she came from peace, and she returned to it. Still, added a third, she built everything they flaunted, and left with her head high. It was no longer gossip, it was admiration, a quiet rebranding of a name they had once tried to erase. Meanwhile, Ina's world had bloomed. Her textile brand now had offices in 2 cities. Her team had grown from a handful of apprentices to full production teams, marketing coordinators, and international clients. She was featured in business panels, invited to speak at women's leadership conferences, and celebrated in financial circles. But none of it changed her essence. She still made time, every evening, to sit on the balcony with her son and tell him stories. Still folded her wrappers carefully at night, still walked into her workspace, with rolled-up sleeves and work to do. The difference was, now, the world saw her for who she had always been. One afternoon, she received a call from a prestigious foundation. They were honoring 5 women across the country who had created sustainable businesses, empowered communities, and broken barriers with dignity. Ina had been selected as the top honoree. She didn't cry, she simply said, "Thank you." The night of the gala, she wore a rich burgundy gown with subtle gold embroidery, one she had designed herself but never had the occasion to wear. Her son stood beside her, suit too big, but eyes shining with pride. "Are you nervous, Mama?" he whispered. Ina smiled. "No, I'm ready." As she stepped onto the stage, the crowd rose. Applause echoed like waves, not for drama, not for revenge, but for resilience, for grace, for truth that walked with its back straight. The host spoke. "Tonight, we honor a woman who built with bare hands, led with quiet power, and walked away from betrayal, not with bitterness, but with brilliance." Ina stepped forward. She took the award, looked across the room, and said, "I was once told I was too small to be noticed, too quiet to be heard, too ordinary to be remembered. But I learned that strength is not volume, it's consistency. It's love without condition, work without praise, and walking away without noise." She looked at her son, sitting in the front row. I didn't win by fighting, she continued. I won by remembering who I was. Far away, in the same hour, Bakiro sat alone on a bench near the village school. The wedding with Lamy had faded into memory. They never truly recovered from the disaster. Lamy had returned to the city, citing stress and a toxic environment. She had stopped calling him altogether. His mother, once so loud and certain, had withdrawn into herself, rarely leaving her room. The compound, once alive, had become a monument to regret. No cars, no house help, no food deliveries, no guests. Only silence, the kind Ina once mastered. Now, it haunted them. Pakiro held a crumpled newspaper in his hand. On the front page, Ina National Business Icon. Ina Adedayo redefines power in silence. Her face glowed on the cover, poised and serene. A woman reborn not out of rage, but rebalance. He read the article once, then again, and again. Every sentence was a mirror, every paragraph a reminder. He had thrown away a lighthouse because it didn't scream to be seen. Later that week, he traveled to the city again, not to beg, not to apologize, just to see. He stood across the road from her new headquarters. Glass building, modern design, company name etched in gold. She stepped out just as the sun began to set, holding her son's hand, laughing softly at something he had said. Her hair was tied back, face clean, posture regal. A car pulled up. Her driver opened the door. She got in without ever noticing him. Or maybe she had. Maybe she chose not to stop. Maybe that was her final word. No word at all. As the car pulled away, Pakiro remained standing. Empty-handed. Empty-hearted. But strangely, not angry, just aware. He had watched her build. He had watched them take. And now he had watched her rise. This was not just the end of a story. It was the beginning of her legacy. In the village, her name no longer needed to be spoken with pity or shame. Now, it was spoken with weight. When girls doubted themselves, their mothers would say, "Be like Ina, steady, quiet, and true." When boys mocked humility, elders replied, "It was the quiet woman who carried the house on her back." And when others talked of respect, someone always added, "Respect the woman who doesn't need to speak to be heard." Ina. The name that stayed. If you watched until the end, comment queen, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with your friends and family.